Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that's both fascinating and, well, frankly, a little alarming. Microplastics.
Definitely alarming.
These tiny fragments are everywhere in our oceans, our food, even places you'd really never expect. So, based on the sources and research you've shared, our mission today is to understand how these persistent particles get into our bodies,
Right.
what they might be doing once they're inside, and maybe most importantly, the practical steps we could actually take to reduce our exposure and, lessen their impact.
It's an incredibly pertinent issue, yeah. The title "Microplastics are everywhere" might sound a bit like hyperbole, maybe clickbait even.
Mm-hmm.
But the research unequivocally confirms it's just a harsh, ubiquitous reality.
That truly paints a grim picture. I mean, from our oceans and remote polar regions right down to human physiology. The sources even note their presence in human semen.
Exactly. And we'll explore the science behind how these microscopic invaders can potentially reduce fertility, maybe act as carcinogens, disrupt hormones like testosterone, impact menstrual health, and even contribute to serious cardiovascular events like atherosclerosis. So yeah, let's begin to unearth the scale of this challenge.
Okay, so to really grasp this, we first need to define what we're up against. What exactly are these microplastics?
Essentially, they are microscopic fragments of plastic, yes, but also hydrocarbon-derived products. So think about the breakdown of really common items: paint, car tires, plastic bottles, or even the synthetic fibers in your clothes.
Right, everyday stuff.
As these items degrade, they release these tiny fibers or fragments, foams, or beads. Now, microplastic generally refers to particles under 5 millimeters.
Okay.
But those found within our bodies are usually significantly smaller, often in the nanometer range. So really nanoplastic.
And it's crucial to understand these aren't like intentionally made to be harmful, right? They're more an insidious byproduct of creating polymers for packaging, all sorts of products.
Precisely.
Yet the smaller they become, the more easily they seem to get into our systems, often through our food or the environment.
And what makes them so problematic is their remarkable resistance to degradation. I mean, they can persist for thousands of years in the environment.
Thousands. Wow.
Yeah, and similarly, they can remain stubbornly present within our bodies. So while broader governmental actions are vital for, systemic change, the sources consistently highlight the necessity of personal action in reducing your own exposure.
And incredibly, some of this exposure was, well, intentional, wasn't it? The sources mention micropearls
Yes.
as particularly troubling, used widely in personal care products, only banned in many places between, 2014 and 2020.
That's right. So for years, many of us were intentionally introducing them right onto our skin, into our bodies.
Unbelievable.
So given they're everywhere, it's natural to wonder, how do they actually reach us? How do they get in? Our sources outline 3 main routes, plus a significant fourth one.
Okay, let's break that down then. First, the air we breathe. And what's surprising here, you said, is that indoor air often contains more microplastics than outdoor air.
It often does, yeah. The most common airborne culprits are things like polyethylene, which comes from packaging and films. Think bubble wrap, for instance.
So what can you do about that?
Well, for actionable steps, the sources suggest using HEPA air filters at home, or simply opening windows frequently. That helps reduce the concentrations and, bonus, improves indoor air quality overall.
Good tip.
Yeah.
Okay, second pathway.
Water. Now, the microplastics in water tend to differ a bit from those in the air. They primarily stem from things like paint or disposable foam products.
Right.
So here you have options. Reverse osmosis filters are apparently very effective.
Okay.
And choosing glass or stainless steel water bottles over plastic, that can make a difference too.
But there's a catch with water sources, isn't there?
Yeah.
Something about seafood.
Yes. Here's a tricky one. Some seafood, particularly bivalve shellfish like mussels or oysters, the ones eaten whole with their digestive systems. Also things like dried anchovies, may be more common in some Asian cuisines, and even sea salt can be significant sources because they concentrate these plastics from the water.
That's tough because those foods often have other benefits.
Exactly. It's a challenge because, things like shellfish and anchovies offer beneficial nutrients, omega-3s, for instance. So it's a balancing act.
Okay, third route. You mentioned this might be where we have the most control.
Yes, the food we consume. This pathway where food gets contaminated during industrial processing or maybe agricultural production is typically where the highest loads of microplastics enter our bodies. And yeah, potentially where our choices matter most directly.
And the fourth route, you said it's often overlooked.
Skin contact, yes. This avenue is also significant and really warrants our attention. We'll circle back to some specifics on prevention for this later when we discuss solutions.
Okay, so we've established microplastics are, well, bad news. They get in through air, water, food, skin. But what are they actually doing once they're inside us? This is where the research gets really specific, and honestly, the implications sound quite profound.
They are. Once nanoplastics, remember, those are smaller than 100 nanometers, get into the body, their tiny size allows them to deposit virtually anywhere. Any organ, any tissue,
Anywhere.
pretty much. And critically, this includes what are called immunologically privileged sites, like the testicles.
Why is that significant?
Well, these sites normally have barriers protecting them from the immune system. The fact that nanoplastics can get in there is worrying.
Mhm.
Studies have shown microplastic levels in testicles can actually be 3 times higher than in other tissues.
3 times higher.
Yeah, and recent small studies even found microplastics in all semen samples they tested. Larger studies confirmed their presence in over half.
That is sobering. So drilling down,
Hmm?
what are the specific implications the sources detail for, say, male reproductive health?
The sources highlight several concerning impacts. First, microplastics can significantly reduce testosterone production.
All right.
And this is particularly alarming when you put it in context. We've seen about a 40% drop in average testosterone levels over the last 40 years.
40%.
Roughly, yeah. About 1% decline annually. And, testosterone isn't just about muscle mass. It's vital for bone density, metabolic health, energy, mood, even confidence.
That's a really stark statistic.
It is. Second, they cause direct sperm damage.
Yeah.
Microplastics generate oxidative stress that's essentially a harmful imbalance that damages cells.
Right, free radicals.
Exactly. Those free radicals affect sperm movement, what we call motility, and also their shape, their morphology.
Yeah.
This severely impacts their ability to actually fertilize an egg. Remember, only about 6 to 8 million out of maybe 100 million sperm per milliliter are typically truly mobile and functional.
So anything reducing that further is obviously detrimental.
Absolutely. It means these particles are actively undermining the very mechanisms of reproduction.
Okay, what else?
Well, third, microplastics seem to reduce the overall sperm count, leading to something called oligospermia, which is a major contributor to male infertility.
Right.
Fourth, many microplastics carry or contain endocrine-disrupting chemicals. Things like BPA, phthalates.
The ones we hear about a lot.
Those are the ones. These compounds lead to negative hormonal effects, including proliferative forms of estrogen, which can encourage excessive cell growth in sensitive tissues, and that's generally not good.
And fifth, you mentioned DNA damage too.
Yes, and this is critical. They can damage sperm DNA. Sperm contribute half the genetic information for a new human being, right?
Of course.
So such DNA damage is strongly linked to things like early pregnancy loss. And it's not just about fertility either. The quality of semen, testosterone levels, they're deeply connected to overall health, youthfulness, cellular vitality. So these findings are relevant to everyone, really, not just those trying to conceive.
Okay, shifting focus slightly, but still within male health. The sources also make a compelling case for microplastics impacting erectile function.
They do, yes. Studies looking at men with erectile dysfunction have actually found microplastics types like P, E, and polypropylene embedded in the smooth muscle of the arteries within the penis.
Embedded in the muscle.
Yes, the arteries responsible for filling the cavernous bodies during an erection. And these plastics, PET, polypropylene, are super common in things like food packaging.
So how does that cause a problem?
Well, the sources suggest the danger lies partly in their physical structure. Under a microscope, these microplastics often have sort of jagged, serrated edges.
Like tiny sharp bits.
Kind of, yeah. Imagine tiny razors potentially causing ongoing injury to the artery walls. This accumulation in the arterial smooth muscle can disrupt its ability to function properly, preventing the dilation needed for blood flow.
Restricting the blood flow needed for an erection.
Exactly. It's a really profound insight into their direct physiological impact.
Now, what about female reproductive health?
Mm.
You mentioned the data there is still emerging.
That's right. While the data on male health is becoming clearer, extensive studies specifically focused on women are still, well, catching up. It doesn't mean the impact isn't there, far from it, but the research focus is maybe a bit behind. We expect more findings in the coming years.
Understood. But even with that gap, it sounds like there are already concerns, particularly around those endocrine disruptors we mentioned.
Definitely. It's particularly concerning how these endocrine disruptors, which microplastics can carry, are known to interfere with the delicate hormonal balance that regulates the menstrual cycle and also the maturation of follicles and the ovules, the eggs.
So what could that lead to?
Well, this disruption can potentially lead to lower ovule quality and subsequently reduced fertility. There's also a strong likelihood, though the sources aren't fully conclusive on this yet, that microplastics could reduce ovarian reserves.
Meaning the number of eggs a woman has.
Exactly. A woman is born with a finite number of eggs, so a reduction here implies fewer chances for fertility over her lifetime and potentially even earlier menopause.
Okay, so beyond reproductive health, it sounds like microplastics really cast a wide net across our entire bodies.
Absolutely. Let's maybe start with the digestive system.
Okay.
Microplastics, partly because of those serrated shapes we talked about, can physically irritate the digestive lining, the mucosa.
Ouch.
Yeah. They might alter the gut bacterial flora, the microbiome, reduce the production of protective mucus, and potentially increase intestinal permeability or leaky gut.
And that could affect nutrient absorption.
Potentially, yes, hindering the absorption of things like amino acids and fats.
Okay, moving from the gut, what about breathing them in? How do they affect our respiratory system?
Well, inhaled microplastics also cause oxidative stress. This can lead to symptoms like coughing, sneezing, shortness of breath. But crucially, the really tiny ones, the nanoparticles, can damage mitochondria.
The powerhouses of the cells.
Exactly. They're responsible for producing energy, ATP. So for you, the listener, this means potentially less cellular energy overall. That connects back to things like reduced sperm motility we mentioned,
Uh-huh.
but also maybe just a more general feeling of tiredness, reduced vitality.
That's a powerful connection. Is there anything suggested to counteract that specific effect on mitochondria?
The sources do suggest stimulating mitochondria. Things like high-intensity interval training, HIIT, can help.
Okay.
Or possibly supplementing with compounds like NAD, omega-3 fatty acids, and CoQ10.
Interesting. We touched on hormones earlier, but this interference goes even deeper, doesn't it? It's not just reproductive hormones.
No, it's broader.
Hmm.
Microplastics seem to interfere with hormone production, transport, metabolism, and even elimination. Think about BPA, that notorious endocrine disruptor we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Carried by microplastics, it has actually been found in the placentas of pregnant women.
Wow. In the placenta.
Yeah, so the underlying message is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Our bodies perceive these foreign particles as invaders.
And like with any invader, that triggers an immune response.
Precisely. It triggers inflammation, particularly noted in the respiratory system, the brain, and the digestive system. This chronic inflammation can lead to a cascade of metabolic problems down the line.
Okay, this next point you mentioned, it really seems to highlight the systemic nature of the problem and just how severe the potential consequences are. We talked about microplastics in the arteries of the penis,
Yes.
but they also appear in a much larger, absolutely life-critical area.
Right.
The carotid arteries in the neck.
This is a really critical finding from the sources, yes. A significant study looked at patients undergoing carotid endarterectomy, that's surgery to remove plaque from obstructed carotid arteries.
Okay.
And they found microplastics embedded within the actual atherosclerotic plaques in 58% of the participants.
58%, so not just floating in the blood, but stuck in the plaque itself.
Embedded within the artery wall as part of the plaque? That's a staggering thought.
And you mentioned their shape again.
Yes, under the microscope, these microplastics often had that serrated shape. The hypothesis is that this makes it easier for them to physically injure the artery walls.
Which then accelerates the formation of plaque.
Exactly, and potentially does so regardless of your diet or other traditional risk factors.
So what are the implications of that finding?
Well, the implications for health are profound. In that study, the patients who had microplastics detected in their carotid plaques had a significantly higher risk of heart attacks, strokes, or death from any cause during the follow-up period, which was about 34 months.
A much higher risk.
Markedly higher, yes. This strongly suggests that these microplastics are contributing significantly to cardiovascular risk, likely by physically damaging artery walls and promoting that dangerous plaque buildup.
Okay, wow. This all sounds pretty daunting, I have to say. But the good news is your sources do provide some clear, practical steps we can take. We can regain some control. So what do we do?
Right, and that's important. We probably can't eliminate exposure entirely. I mean, the sources mention even polar bears have endocrine disruptors.
Right, it's everywhere.
But we can significantly reduce our exposure from the most impactful sources. So let's talk specifics. Food and drink. Try to prioritize glass or metal containers over plastic bottles.
Okay, simple enough.
Opt for filtered water. As we said, reverse osmosis seems good, but other filters help too. Resources often detail various filter types. When you're consuming animal products, if possible, removing the digestive system before cooking can reduce microplastic intake.
Ah, like with the shellfish.
Exactly. And for babies, choosing silicone bottle nipples instead of plastic is a recommended step.
Makes sense. What about personal care products where those micropearls used to be?
Yeah, good point. Select mineral-based sunscreens and deodorants, and check labels to ensure they're free of known endocrine disruptors like benzophenones or aluminum salts.
Okay,
And double-check that other personal hygiene products, especially exfoliants, don't contain polypropylene or polyethylene. Those were common sources before the bans.
got it. What else in our daily environment? Anything less obvious?
Well, one thing mentioned is phone cases. Consider cases made of leather or wood or other non-plastic materials. Plastic cases, through constant handling, can be a frequent source of microplastic exposure directly to your skin.
I haven't thought of that one.
And another key awareness point, some products made from recycled plastic, despite the good environmental intentions,
Yeah.
can actually sometimes release more microplastics than conventional ones, depending on the recycling process and the original plastic types. So it's complex.
Anything dietary to help mitigate exposure, not just avoid it.
Yes, absolutely. The sources strongly recommend increasing your insoluble fiber intake. Aim for at least 30 grams per day.
Why fiber?
Fiber essentially acts like a natural broom in your digestive system. It helps trap microplastics and aids in their elimination from the body.
Okay, that's a really practical tip. Now, beyond just reducing exposure, are there steps we can take to counteract some of the negative effects, like that impact on testosterone you mentioned?
Yes, definitely. For testosterone support and overall cellular health, the sources really emphasize focusing on foundational wellness pillars.
Like what?
Engage in heavy resistance training, maybe 3 to 4 times a week. Prioritize high-quality sleep that's crucial for maximizing natural testosterone release overnight.
Sleep is key.
Always. If you're exercising regularly, consider supplementing with about 5 grams of creatine daily. Ensure you're getting adequate protein intake. And importantly, avoid excessive, prolonged caloric deficits, especially if you don't need to lose weight, as that can lower testosterone production.
Right. And nutrient deficiencies.
Crucial. Address any deficiencies in key nutrients. Vitamin D is a big one. Aim for maybe 2,000 to 5,000 IU per day, but it's best to get your blood levels checked.
Good advice.
Also, boron, magnesium, and zinc. These minerals are absolutely fundamental for hormone production and overall metabolic health.
Okay, lots of actionable steps there.
Yeah, this deep dive has certainly brought a lot of pretty heavy information to light, hasn't it? And it's natural to feel a bit overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the problem.
Definitely.
But the crucial takeaway, I think, is not to panic.
Right. Easier said than done sometimes, but yeah. Think of microplastics maybe as an unavoidable consequence, to some degree, of our modern lifestyle. The real power lies in focusing on what you can control.
Absolutely. The sources consistently emphasize that while reducing microplastic exposure is important, it's not going to compensate for, say, a diet full of unhealthy processed food, or a lack of exercise, or chronically poor sleep.
Good perspective.
Those foundational lifestyle choices likely have a far greater and more immediate impact on your overall health.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means taking those practical steps where you can, being mindful of your choices with plastics, water filters, food containers, but also remembering that bigger picture of holistic health. Prioritize those whole foods, get regular movement, make restorative sleep non-negotiable.
And maybe this raises an important question for you to consider moving forward. As we continue to learn more about these pervasive environmental contaminants, how do we best balance our individual actions with perhaps advocating for broader systemic changes that are needed to really protect our health and, the health of our planet in the long run?
That is definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope this has given you a clearer understanding and some practical tools to navigate this world of microplastics.
Hope so too.
Until next time, stay curious and keep seeking that deeper knowledge.